Hello, and welcome back to Le Crime Noir Don't Scroll. Comment now and let me know where you're listening from. It really brightens up these dark nights. Quick info. Only 2-3 ads will appear in the first 10 minutes. The rest of the video is fully ad-free. If sorrowful and terrifying tales are your escape, like this video and subscribe. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1, my name does not matter. Even if I told you, it would not help. Officially, I do not exist, and neither does my family. There are no proper records of us, no clean documents, no history anyone in power would admit to. On paper, I am a child of two people who were never really my parents, and the town where I was born has been erased so completely that only a few old maps still whisper that it was ever there at all. I come from a small town near the Siberian border, a place that was supposed to be nothing more than a mining and refining settlement. According to my grandfather, the town was built close to a large iron deposit. The mine and refinery were placed near each other so the government could save time and money. People came there for work, because in those days, work was enough reason to move your whole life to the edge of the world. My parents moved there before I was born. My mother worked as an official recorder, and my father, André, was a policeman. I never knew them properly. Growing up, I was told they had died from a sickness when I was very young. My grandparents raised me, and for most of my childhood, I believed they were my real parents. It was only when I got older that I noticed small things that did not make sense. My birth certificate carried my grandparents' names instead of my parents' names. Whenever I asked about my mother and father, my grandparents grew quiet. My grandmother's eyes would fill with tears, and my grandfather would tell me not to ask questions that could hurt the living and disturb the dead. Because I loved them, and because I saw them as my parents in every way that mattered, I stopped asking. But the questions never really left me. When I was 15, my grandfather died. A few months later, my grandmother followed him. I was left alone in their house, a house that suddenly felt far too large and far too silent. My grandfather had prepared for that day better than I understood at the time. He left me enough money to continue my education, and the house had already been placed under my name. He must have known he would not be there forever. He must have known that one day I would start searching. I found the letter while going through old belongings in the storage room. It was hidden under a pile of my infant clothes, folded carefully and wrapped in cloth. The paper had yellowed with age, and the handwriting looked hurried in places, as if the person writing it had been fighting both time and fear. The moment I saw the first line, I knew it was from my mother. I cannot explain. How? I had never heard her voice, never known the touch of her hand, never seen her face outside a few hidden photographs. But I knew. She had written to me in case she was not alive to see me grow up. She told me not to be angry with her, or with my father. She said they had been unlucky victims of a madman. She wrote that my father had been a good policeman, a man who wanted to give me the best life our country could offer. She wrote that she had worked as a recorder in the government offices, recording conversations between officials and visitors. At first, her work was simple. She had worked at the court before, and that experience helped her get a better position in the governor's office. It was steady work, and sometimes it allowed her to return home early to be with me. My parents had moved to that town 4 years before I was born. My father had been sent there to replace an older policeman who was retiring. Life there was quiet in the beginning, hard, cold, and isolated, but quiet. The mine and refinery gave people jobs, and most families kept to themselves. The town had its small routines, its shops, its school, its police station, its government offices, and all the dull pieces of life that make a place feel real. Then the old governor sent his retirement request to Moscow. The officials sent a new man to replace him. My mother wrote that she called him Rasputin in private, because he looked so much like the old stories and pictures of that strange holy man. His real name was Vladimir Noskovic. He came to the town as the new governor, but he did not behave like the usual government men. He did not seem interested in changing the way the town was run. He allowed the local officials to continue their normal work. He attended meetings, signed papers, smiled when needed, and mostly kept to himself. 6 months after his appointment, my mother became his personal recorder. He liked her because she did not stare at him the way the other women in the office did. She kept her eyes down when she worked. When she recorded conversations, she focused on the words and not on the people. That, she believed, was why he trusted her. Soon, she found herself sitting in his office, writing down plans for a new building. At first, she thought it was another government project connected to the mine or the refinery. Then she learned it was to be a laboratory. The request had come from higher authority. The new building would be placed just outside town. The Army would oversee construction. My mother wrote that it was finished in only a year, which surprised everyone. From outside, it looked like a one-floor government facility, plain and boring, nothing that would draw much attention. But during one of the meetings she recorded, my mother learned that the building had 3 lower floors beneath the visible structure. The only reason it had been built so quickly was because prisoners and people called undesirables had been used as labor. They were brought in quietly, worked hard, and disappeared from town before anyone could ask too many questions. After the laboratory was completed, my mother was moved there because Vladimir wanted to be closer to the facility. He was not only a governor, he was also a scientist. That was when the true purpose of the town began to reveal itself. The normal management of the town was left to the same people who had been running it under the old governor. Vladimir no longer pretended to care about roads, wages, disputes, or food supplies. He spent most of his time at the laboratory. My mother continued recording his conversations, but now those conversations were not about taxes or mining output. They were about viruses, bacteria, symptoms, exposure periods, mortality rates, and possible cures. She wrote that she had never imagined such a place could exist near their town. She had never imagined that the government would build something like that so close to ordinary families. I was only a year old then. Because Vladimir spent so much time in the lower sections of the laboratory, my mother was sometimes allowed to leave early. She came home to me, fed me, held me, and tried to pretend our lives were still normal. But she had already begun to fear the place. She wrote that there were doors she was not allowed to pass, rooms that smelled sharply of chemicals, soldiers who never spoke, and men in sealed suits who moved through the halls like ghosts. Then, one day, while she was filing records in an office, a man in a full protective suit ran in. He was covered from head to toe and wore an old gas mask. His voice was muffled, but my mother could hear the panic in it. He told her to leave immediately. Something had leaked in the lower sections, he said. She was to go home and wait until she was told it was safe to return. She did not question him. As she left, she saw soldiers rushing into the building, forming barriers in the corridors and outside the entrance. At the gate, a soldier told her to leave at once. Usually, she walked to the bus stop near the laboratory, but that day a passing soldier offered her a ride to the main square. From there, she took a short bus ride home. The town looked normal. People were walking with bags of groceries. Smoke rose from chimneys. Workers were returning from the refinery. Nothing seemed wrong, and that made the whole thing feel unreal. Later that day, my father came home early. My mother asked him what had happened. He told her the army had taken control of the local police. He had been relieved of duty along with the others. In the letter, she wrote that she had never seen my father so scared. He was a policeman, a man trained to deal with danger, but that day he looked like someone who had seen the ground open beneath his feet. He told her they needed to leave immediately. She asked where they could go. He said he had a friend named Boris who lived a few kilometers outside town, a farmer who might hide them until things calmed down. My mother did not argue. The warning from the laboratory was still fresh in her mind. They packed only what they could carry, bundled me in blankets, and waited until the streets were empty. It was close to 1 in the morning when they finally left. A storm had started, and the roads were difficult. My father drove slowly, watching for patrols and checkpoints. Boris's farmhouse was about 45 minutes from town. When they arrived, Boris hid the car in the barn behind the house and covered it. His wife took me from my mother's arms and tried to calm me while my parents explained what little they knew. They stayed there for several days. My mother wrote that she feared for me and for my father every hour. Andre constantly watched the windows, checking the road. Patrols passed the farm many times. When soldiers came to search the house, Boris hid my parents and me in a lower room. The soldiers asked whether anyone from town had come to him. Boris lied calmly. He told them no one had visited. He even allowed them to search the house to prove his honesty. Somehow, they did not find the hidden room. After a week, my father decided he had to know what was happening in town. My mother begged him not to go, but he said they could not hide forever without information. He left in the middle of the night. He was gone for 3 days. My mother wrote that she wished he had never left, because when he returned, it was the last time she ever saw him. He came back at 2 in the morning, but he did not come inside. He stood outside the farmhouse window, leaning heavily against the wall. He looked sick. His eyes had sunk deep into his face. His skin was pale, and every few words he had to stop and cough. My mother tried to open the door, but he shouted at her not to. He told them not to open any door or window. He was afraid he would infect them too. Then he told them what he had seen. Everyone in the town had been infected. The death toll was not partial. It was basically everyone. When he left the farm and approached the checkpoints, he found them empty. The soldiers who had been guarding the roads were gone. At first, he thought they had abandoned their posts. Then, as he got closer to town, he saw bodies along the road. Soldiers and townspeople lay together in the snow and mud. Some cars had stopped in the middle of the road with dead people still inside. A few bodies were near the ditches, as if they had tried to crawl away before dying. Inside the town, houses were burning or already burnt. Smoke drifted across the streets. Dogs barked from behind locked doors until they stopped. The town square was almost empty, except for bodies and abandoned vehicles. My father found an official announcement nailed to a post. It mentioned a sickness and ordered people to remain inside unless they were infected. The wording made no sense to him. If you were infected, why would you be told to go outside? If you were healthy, why would you remain trapped inside your home? He searched for anyone alive, but found no one he could help. The whole town had been exposed. By the time he turned back, it was already too late for him. He began coughing violently while driving and nearly crashed into a parked lorry. He lost consciousness and woke the next day, still inside the car, weak and feverish. Whatever had escaped from the laboratory was in the air. He had breathed it in, and now it was inside him. He told my mother to wait 1 hour after he left before coming outside. He said more soldiers would arrive soon, and anyone connected to the town might be executed to cover up the incident. My mother wrote that she screamed and cried at him through the window. She pressed her hand against the glass, hoping she could feel his warmth one last time. He only raised his hand and smiled at her. She wrote that it was the same smile she had fallen in love with. Then He walked away into the storm. Boris did not waste time. Rather than leave by the road my father had used, he took my mother and me out the back and hid us in his car. His wife held me while my mother wept. They left everything behind that night. The farm, the town, my father, their old lives. It took them 10 days to reach Moscow. They used back roads to avoid checkpoints. They slept in the homes of friends, relatives, and people Boris trusted. The journey was hard, especially with a small child. But my mother wrote that the 3 adults cared only about keeping me alive. She asked to be taken to her parents' home. When she arrived, she told my grandfather everything. He listened without speaking, then shook his head. He also worked for the government, though not in the same office. He told her he had heard whispers about Vladimir Noskovic. People in certain circles called him the father of pestilence. My grandfather did not know all the details, but after hearing my mother's story, he understood enough. She was not safe. Officials had already come to my grandparents' home looking for her. If they found her, they would find me too. My mother made a choice. She decided not to hide with me. Instead, she would surrender herself and tell them I had died while she was on the run. She hoped that if they believed I was dead, they would stop searching for me. My grandparents would raise me under their names, and I would live. At the end of the letter, she wrote that she loved me very much, and that my father loved me even more. She asked me not to hate them for what they had done. She hoped that one day I would understand. She wrote that I was more precious to them than their own lives, and if they had known what was going to happen, maybe they would have chosen differently. Maybe they would have stayed somewhere far away. Maybe they would have watched me grow. I cried when I finished reading. I cried for my mother, who had given herself up so I could disappear. I cried for my father, who had stood outside a window dying and still refused to come in because he loved us too much to risk us. I cried for my grandparents, who had carried that truth for years and never told me, because silence was the only protection they had left. After that, I could not live with not knowing. I followed my grandfather's example and entered government work. At first, I told myself I only wanted a stable life, the way he had wanted for me. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted access. I wanted files. I wanted names. I wanted to know who my parents had really been and what had been done to them. Many years passed before I reached a position where I could search properly. What I found shook me to my core. My parents had existed, but their official records had been removed. Not hidden, not sealed. Removed, their names appeared in old references and cross notes, but the main files were gone. Employment records, identification documents, housing files, police service documents, everything had either vanished or been altered. When I searched for the town itself, I found the same thing. Officially, it no longer existed. Records of its mine, refinery, local offices, population, and budgets had been erased. All I found were old maps showing the location and a few references in transportation logs that no one had bothered to destroy. Then I searched for Vladimir Noskovic. That was where I made my mistake. I think that search exposed me. Someone must have been watching the archives. Someone must have flagged the name. Since then, I have noticed men following me. Calls that end when I answer. A car parked near my building for hours. Doors that were locked when I left and not quite locked when I returned. The secret police know I exist, and soon they will come for me. Before that happens, I need to write down what I found. Vladimir Noskovic was a scientist whose main field was viruses. He was not merely a researcher. He was a genius at creating, altering, and weaponizing disease. He had been given enormous authority to build laboratories in remote towns and use local populations to observe the effects of his creations. The purpose was never stated plainly, but it is not hard to understand. In case of another great war, the government wanted weapons that could destroy enemies without risking soldiers, weapons that could spread invisibly and leave no battlefield in the usual sense. There were 6 towns involved in his experiments. 6. My birthplace was only one of them. I found the records hidden in a cabinet inside the main archives, buried under unrelated documents. I do not know whether someone hid them there to preserve the truth or simply forgot they existed. One report concerned a small settlement in the Siberian region with only about 200 people. Vladimir chose it because of its isolation and low population. A bacteria was released into the local water supply, then later into the air, so observers could compare the effects. According to the report, the bacteria worked quickly. It began with fever, coughing, and weakness. Then the skin softened. The body's tissues broke down from within. In a matter of days, the infected became little more than pools of living flesh, still conscious for some time, still able to move weakly, until death finally came. Afterward, the remains were burned along with the ground around them. The entire settlement was set aflame and then buried by the army. The report did not use emotional words. It did not call them people. It called them subjects, exposures, and losses. There were photographs attached. I wish I had never seen them. Now I understand why all records were destroyed. Not because of failure, but because of success. Vladimir proved that he could erase a town. He proved that a population could be infected, studied, disposed of, and removed from history. My town was one of his laboratories. My parents were not victims of random sickness. They were witnesses, and I am evidence that the cover-up was not complete. I do not know how much time I have left. If you are reading this, then they have probably found me. Maybe they have already taken me. Maybe my apartment has been cleaned, my files removed, my name erased, just like my parents' names were erased. Maybe, by tomorrow, no one will remember I was here at all. But I hope this reaches someone before that happens. I hope people begin asking about the towns that vanished from the maps. I hope they ask about the laboratories built near mines, forests, and forgotten roads. I hope they ask about Vladimir Noskovich, the man some people called the father of pestilence. I hope they ask why entire families disappeared, why records were burned, why children like me were hidden under false names and raised to fear questions. I tried to dig further, but I was not successful. Or maybe I was too successful. And that is why they are coming now. There are footsteps in the hallway outside my door. They have been there for several minutes. They are not trying to hide anymore. I hear radios clicking softly. I hear men speaking in low voices. I have placed my mother's letter inside the same envelope as these pages. I do not know if anyone will find them, but I have to try. My mother ended her letter by telling me I was worth more than her life. I do not know if I have been worthy of that sacrifice, but I know this much: my family existed. My town existed. The people who died there existed. They had names, homes, children, fears, hopes, and lives. And no government should be allowed to bury all of that under silence. Story 2. Everyone else is gone now. It's just the two of us left, me and the thing I've tried not to look at for 8 years. I used to think I was running from a place, from a night, from a name. But I wasn't running from a location. I was running from memory. And memory is patient. Memory doesn't chase you the way a man does. It waits. It lets you build a life on top of it. It lets you pretend you're fine. Then it taps you on the shoulder when you're finally tired enough to listen. That's the truth about ghosts. They don't always haunt you to kill you. Sometimes they haunt you, so you can't forget. I'm done trying to forget. I'm sitting in my car with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel like I'm trying to hold myself in place. My sketchbook is on the dashboard. The same one. Somehow, the cover is bent, the corner's frayed. I can still flip it open and see the drawings I used to hide, like they were evidence of a crime. Yu-Gi-Oh monsters, Toonami characters, masks from the Ninja Turtles, even a couple disturbed album covers I thought were the hardest thing anyone had ever made. I keep it there because it reminds me of the first time Tommy talked to me. Donatello's my favorite. That was the first thing he ever said to me. I remember it like a flashbulb. I was 12, sitting at lunch with my sketchbook angled so no one could see. I was finishing Raphael's mask, trying to get the shape right, while keeping my elbow positioned like a shield. When I heard the voice, I assumed the worst. In middle school, you learn fast that someone talking to you isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it's a setup. Sometimes it's the opening line before the joke hits and the whole table laughs. So I looked up, ready to shut the sketchbook, ready to lie, ready to pretend I wasn't doing anything. And it was only Tommy. Even at 12, Tommy looked like someone life had been rough on before it even started. He had this square, heavy torso and the kind of clothes that always looked like they came from the bottom of a donation bin. His skin was pale and constantly dry, like he lived in winter no matter what season it was. His lips were always chapped, and he licked them until they were raw. He had thick glasses, really thick, and behind them were small black eyes that seemed both sharp and tired. His voice was hard to place. It wasn't deep, it wasn't high. It had this dull hum to it, like an old refrigerator trying to keep going. Sometimes he sounded like he had a slight lisp. Sometimes people said he talked weird, and you could tell they meant it as an excuse. The worst part wasn't any one feature. It was the whole picture. Tommy was just different enough that people didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't obviously disabled in a way that would make teachers step in fast, and he wasn't normal enough to blend in. That meant he lived in the exact space where kids feel safest being cruel. He was the kind of kid people pushed around because no one would stop them. And in a middle school cafeteria, that meant one thing for me: danger by association. It sounds pathetic now, but at 12 my body reacted before my brain did. My chest tightened. My skin went hot. I could feel my heart kick into that animal rhythm, like my body was trying to launch itself out of the chair. Middle school was a jungle with fluorescent lighting. If the wrong people saw you talking to the wrong person, you could lose whatever tiny level of safety you'd managed to build. I knew I wasn't high on the social ladder myself. I was only a few rungs above the bottom. But even that small distance felt like everything. And when Tommy stood there, I could feel my instincts screaming at me to move away. Don't be seen. Don't be linked. Don't get targeted. Then the stupidest, most honest part of me took over. Because I loved Ninja Turtles. Raphael's the coolest, I said, trying to sound casual, like it didn't matter, even if he gets mad at dumb things. The words came out too fast, like I couldn't stop them. I didn't look at him when I said it. I kept my eyes on the paper and pretended I wasn't nervous. Tommy laughed. And it didn't match him at all. It was full and real, like he wasn't used to laughing, but liked it when it happened. Yeah, he said. That's why he's tough. He stretched the word tough a little, like he was tasting it. And then he pushed up his glasses and did this goofy martial arts impression with his arms, like he was trying to do wushu chops and kicks. It was corny and awkward and somehow completely sincere. My brain screamed at me while he did it. I can still hear the way it felt back then, like a siren right behind my eyes. Run. Look around. Someone's watching. Freak, loser, You're going to get dragged down with him. Move, but something else happened too. I laughed. And then he laughed harder, and suddenly the cafeteria didn't feel like a threat for a minute. It felt like a pocket of air in a place where I usually held my breath. We talked for the rest of lunch. Then the next day. Then the day after that. We talked about things I had learned to keep quiet about. Games, cartoons, weird music, drawing, all the stuff that would get you labeled. Tommy liked it all. The more we talked, the more I realized I didn't have to hide around him. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to pretend to be cooler than I was. I could just be myself. And for a kid who lived on constant self-censorship, that felt like water after a drought. One afternoon, he flipped through my sketchbook like it was a treasure. "Dude," he said, eyes wide behind the thick lenses, "these rock." He got more excited with every page, like every drawing was proof I wasn't alone. Looking back now, the drawings weren't impressive. They were just a kid, copying the style of things he loved. But Tommy treated them like they mattered. That's how it started. One conversation became two. Eventually, it became Saturday game nights. When everyone else was out trying to be someone, Tommy and I would be in a bedroom with a cart TV and 2 controllers, surviving the week by escaping into something that didn't hurt. For the next 3 years, we were, in a way, socially homeless. We drifted from group to group, never fully belonging anywhere, staying where people tolerated us. We got shoved, mocked, tripped in hallways. We learned where not to walk. We learned how to laugh at ourselves before anyone else could. We learned how to be quiet, but we also made it through. Then, freshman year of high school hit, and something changed. Not because we changed together, but because we changed differently. Tommy got bigger. Wider, he stayed the same in every other way. Decent, awkward, obsessed with the same hobbies. Still wearing the same kind of clothes, still carrying the same target on his back. I got taller. I put on muscle. I started playing football. I got noticed by girls. And the moment that happened, I started doing something I didn't even realize I was doing at first. I started hiding. I started hiding my hobbies, my sketchbook, my favorite shows, the parts of me that were still the same kid who loved Ninja Turtles and stayed up late watching anime. It became automatic. I'd see some kid, Naruto, running down the hallway, and I'd roll my eyes out loud, but inside I'd feel a sharp little envy, because that kid wasn't ashamed the way I was. I'd laugh at jokes that used to be aimed at me. I'd cringe in public at things I loved in private. And the more I hid, the more I ended up around people who used to stomp on me for entertainment. You'd think that would make me angry, but it didn't. Not then. That was the scariest part. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like relief. When you've been hurt long enough, you stop caring why it happened. You only care that it stops. You start organizing your whole life around keeping it stopped. You become grateful to anyone who lets you breathe, even if they were the ones who suffocated you before. Tommy and I stayed friends through pure effort. I dragged him into my new world the way you drag a suitcase up a flight of stairs, straining, insisting it'll be worth it when you reach the top. I honestly believed if I could be accepted, then Tommy could too. I didn't understand what I was walking him into. I became a running back for the Billboy Bulldogs near the end of freshman year. I literally ran into Roman at practice, shoulder to chest, both of us stumbling. Roman was relaxed, strong, the kind of guy who never looked nervous. He was also a nerd in a way that surprised me. He loved Mortal Kombat, knew all the characters, talked about it like it was art. Roman wore who he was on the outside. He didn't seem to pay for it the way Tommy and I always had. He invited me over. A few intense rounds of Raiden versus Liu Kang later, I felt that click of friendship, that easy rhythm. Through Roman, I met Darren, Cameron, and Shiloh. They were funny and loud and reckless in the way that seemed exciting when you're 15. They were the kind of guys who acted like nothing could touch them. That was the group I dragged Tommy into. And that was the group that took us to Algernon's Lip. It was October 2006. We were under the bleachers skipping fourth period. Tommy protested at first. Darren called him a loser. Cameron made some stupid comment that studying was for gays. Roman sat there reading a comic while it happened like it was background noise. They lit cigarettes, passed them around. Darren's long blonde bangs hung in his face, and the girls loved him for it. He handed me the cigarette. Tommy looked at me like he was asking, silently, why I was doing this. I shrugged and dragged it anyway, forcing myself not to cough because I didn't want to look weak. "You guys hear about Tristan?" Darren asked, smoke sliding out of his mouth. "The dude who died in spring?" Cameron said, hanging upside down under the bleachers like he wanted everyone to notice his abs. "Yeah," Darren said. "He fell off that ridge, if you know what I mean." "The lip?" Roman asked, finally looking up. Darren nodded. "Ghost Mountain. That's like 4 people in 30 years. 5, Tommy corrected automatically. Quiet, but certain. Darren rolled his eyes. "Whatever," Roman snorted. "It's just a crappy trail. No railings. Guy probably slipped taking a piss." Shiloh, already high that early in the day, leaned in like he was about to tell us a secret of the universe. "No, man, that place is creepy. People lose stuff. Like Blair Witch style. People lose memories. It happened to me." Darren laughed. "Shiloh, the last time you went there, you were so high you threw up on Tasha and asked who stole your car." Shiloh blinked slowly. "And I never found it. Things go missing." "I drove you," I said. He looked at me, but not really, like his eyes weren't fully connected to his brain. Tommy tried to pull me back into our normal world for a second. "Hey, Ryan," he said, "you hear Ratchet and Clank Future is coming out?" Darren and Cameron both raised eyebrows like Tommy had just spoken another language. I reacted too fast, too automatically, like I'd been trained. "Huh?" "Nah," I said. "I don't mess with that stuff." Tommy stared at me, confused. "What's that?" Darren asked. "Some rat game," Cameron said, making it sound dirty. "Fucking weird," Darren muttered. "God of War 2 looks sick, though," Roman said, and I jumped on it like it was a rope thrown to a drowning man. "Oh, yeah," I said. "That looks tight." Tommy looked down at the dirt. Darren brought up Tristan for a reason. He wanted to go up there. He wanted a ghost hunt. Then he turned it into something else, like he always did. He said we should invite cheerleaders, do a candlelight vigil for Tristan, make it romantic. I thought about Amber immediately. She was everything to me at that time. Beautiful, popular, the kind of girl who made me feel like I'd finally escaped being invisible. I told Darren Amber wasn't a big horror fan. I didn't say what I was really thinking, which was that Amber's friends didn't like Darren, and they definitely didn't like Tommy, and I didn't want the night to turn into a public humiliation. Darren went quiet, and the whole group went quiet with him. That tension came fast, like a switch being flipped. Darren was the kind of guy who pushed until he got his way, and the part of me that used to get shoved into lockers still reacted to his mood. Then Darren smiled and said maybe it could be a vigil. That sounded softer, more acceptable. I felt relief, like I'd been allowed to breathe again. Darren wrapped an arm around me and joked about how it would get the girls in the mood. Cameron nodded like it was genius. Roman called Darren a freak, but he was laughing too. Tommy just stared at the dirt. Amber agreed to come once I told her Cameron would be there. For some reason, 3 cheerleaders wanted to hear Cameron sing "You're Beautiful," which made no sense to me then, and still doesn't now. Plans got made for Saturday. Everyone acted like it was going to be a fun, spooky adventure. Tommy texted me starting Monday. Then again. And again. Over and over. I didn't respond much. I was busy. Or I told myself I was busy. The truth was uglier. I didn't want to split my attention. I was drunk in Cameron's basement by Thursday night, thinking about Amber and football and all the things that made me feel like a different person. I finally texted Tommy back with a lazy yo. He responded instantly. Hey. I asked if he wanted to game Friday night. He said yes immediately and suggested Okami. We played in my room with the old TV humming and the carpet smelling faintly like dust and energy drinks. For the first hour, it felt like it used to. Just us, joking, relaxed. Then Amber texted me photos, and my focus shifted. Silence grew between Tommy and me. The distance returned without either of us naming it. Eventually, Tommy spoke. Hey, Ryan? Yeah? Maybe we shouldn't go tomorrow. I felt annoyed the second he said it. Not because he was wrong, but because I could already see the conversation coming. He'd be nervous. I'd pressure him. I'd lie a little, telling him people wanted him there. He'd cave. We'd go. That was our pattern. Why? I sighed, and I heard the impatience in my own voice. They don't like me. That's not true, I said too quickly. Roman likes you. Tommy turned and looked at me, and in the flicker of the game's light, I saw tears sitting in his eyes. And Darren? Cameron? What about them? He asked. Roman doesn't even talk to me unless you're around. His voice shook. It made my skin crawl. Not because I hated him for being upset, but because I hated the feeling of being responsible. I was tired of carrying him. That's what I told myself. But the truth was, I was tired of being reminded of who I used to be. I started to say something, then stopped. What? Tommy asked. Nothing, I said. He snapped loud and sudden, and it shocked me. No, tell me. I didn't. I let him sit there in pain while I pretended the game mattered more. Then he whispered, quiet and broken, why do you even hang out with me? I tried to patch it up the only way I knew how then. Let's just go to the party, I said. It'll be fine, I promise. He wanted to say no, I could see it, but he didn't. Instead, he stood up, went into his closet, and pulled out an Ouija board, dusty and worn like it had been waiting. Maybe they'll like this, he said. A seance after the vigil? Perfect, I said, and at the time I meant it. Saturday night came. We piled into Shiloh's 2002 Explorer and drove out to Algernon's Lip. The trail up wasn't a ridge exactly, but it was a steep climb through dense trees. The path angled up hard, so steep it felt like walking up a slanted roof for most of a mile. Then it flattened into a small clearing near the top. That clearing was the Lip, a slanted patch of grass that ended in soft, crumbling ground and a drop into darkness. People had died there. Everyone knew it. The town treated it like a half-joke and a half-warning, the kind of place teenagers go because fear feels exciting when you think you're immortal. We got out of the car, and the air was cold enough to bite. Roman zipped his coat and muttered, "The things I do for sex." Cameron wore a hoodie and bike shorts because he couldn't stand not showing off part of his body. Darren joked about the girls taking longer to climb and how that would make them stick around. I laughed along because that was what I did. I swallowed my discomfort like it was normal. Shiloh went back down the trail to meet the girls and carry supplies up later. That left the rest of us. Me, Tommy, Roman, Darren, Cameron. Tommy had a bag with the Ouija board and beer we'd stolen from my dad. As we started up the trail, he dropped the bag and said, "I brought a few things to make the night more exciting." I expected Darren to insult him. I expected Cameron to laugh. Instead, when Tommy pulled out the beer and the board, their faces lit up. For a moment, Tommy looked proud, like he belonged. Cameron called him Tomcat, like it was a nickname he'd always used. Roman patted him on the shoulder. Even Darren smiled, like Tommy had earned a small stamp of approval. I remember feeling happy then. Really happy. Like maybe I'd been right. Maybe I could pull Tommy into this world, and he'd finally be safe. We climbed. The forest felt different once we left the road behind. Every crunch of leaves under our shoes sounded too loud. The moon was bright and heavy above the trees. We were joking, but underneath it, there was a tension none of us wanted to admit, like we all knew we were stepping into a place where bad things happened and pretending it was just a thrill. When we reached the clearing, it hit me how beautiful it was. The grass sloped like it was leaning toward the moon, and through the trees you could see the dark shape of the forest below. For a second, I pictured Amber and me lying there later, looking at stars, laughing at how dramatic Darren was, pretending we were older than we were. Darren barked at me to help with the blankets. We set up candles, a boombox, tents. Silence settled between us as we worked, the kind that comes when people don't want to name what they're feeling. Tommy was the only one who didn't seem tense. He was energized, moving fast, setting things up like he'd rehearsed it. He handed out beers to ease the mood. Cameron whooped and called him a beautiful bastard. Darren even managed a grudging thank you. We were a few beers in when my phone buzzed. Shiloh texted that he and the girls would be there in about 45 minutes. Darren cursed. He was slurring more than I expected. I can't wait that long. Tommy set his beer down. We could rehearse the seance, he said, for the girls. Cameron scoffed. Darren pushed Cameron and said he wanted to know his lines before Rachel got there. Rachel was one of Amber's friends, and I knew she hated Darren. Darren didn't seem to know or care. He asked me if I thought she'd like him, and I gave him some neutral answer because I didn't want to be honest. Then we put our hands on the planchette. The mood changed instantly. The wind felt louder. The moon felt too bright. The edge of the lip felt closer than it should have, like the ground itself was leaning toward us. I felt a weird numbness in my fingertips, like static. Tommy leaned in and spoke in a low voice that didn't sound like him. The energy is perfect tonight. Darren asked what that meant, but his voice shook when he did it. Tommy looked around at all of us. You can feel it, he said, the threat of something else. The veil is thin here. You've all been quieter since we got here. I know you sense it. Roman asked, softly. What is it? Tommy's eyes were intense. This place has seen death, he said. Accident or foul. Spirits that are angry or spirits that are kind. Maybe it depends on us. Maybe the thing you call is shaped by the person calling it. I didn't like how serious he sounded. It made my skin prickle. Tommy looked at me. Someone else should ask, he said. Not me. I swallowed. Okay, I said. Tristan, if you're here, say hi. The planchette snapped to H, then slowly moved to I. Cameron started to speak, then stopped. Tommy's face had gone pale. It answered, he whispered, and the fear in his voice felt real. I asked how Tristan died. The board spelled fall. Darren accused someone of moving it. Tommy told him to be quiet, and Darren actually shut up, which was rare. I asked if it was an accident. No, the forest went loud after that, like every sound had been waiting for the moment we stopped talking. Then Roman urged me to ask the next question, and Darren and Cameron nodded like they couldn't look away. I asked, who pushed you? The planchette moved wildly, circling letters, stalling, like it couldn't decide. Then it spelled, behind you. We all spun around fast. And then Tommy screamed. Not a ghost scream, Tommy's scream, right in our ears. He yelled blah, like a joke, like a cheap scare in a haunted house. We all screamed too, real screams. And then the tension broke like a glass hitting the floor. Tommy laughed. Pretty good, right? Darren shoved him. You think this is funny? Tommy tried to explain he was practicing for the girls, but Darren didn't care. Cameron muttered something about me bringing this freak. I laughed nervously, trying to calm things down, trying to keep the night fun. Then, Tommy snapped back at Darren, and Darren snapped back harder. They stood up, chest to chest. Roman and I separated them, each of us holding one back. Darren threatened Tommy. Tommy insulted Cameron. Cameron tried to lunge. Roman held him. Everything escalated too fast, like the alcohol had been waiting for an excuse. I held Tommy back and hissed. What are you doing? You're ruining the night. Tommy shoved me. His eyes were wet and furious, and he was stronger than I expected. He wasn't just angry at them, he was angry at me. I'm ruining it? He yelled. Not him. He pointed at Darren. You asked me to tell a ghost story, and I'm the bad guy because you believed it? I tried to smooth it over. I tried to make him apologize so we could move on. I said the word apologize like it was a solution. That was the moment Tommy's face changed into something I'd never seen on him before. Pure hatred, sharpened by years. Apologize? He said. To him? What about me, Ryan? What about the jokes and the looks and the threats? Where's my apology? He called out Roman for pretending to be nice. He called out Cameron for orbiting Darren like a satellite. He said things I didn't want to hear, because they were true. Then he turned fully on me. He said he tried, that he chased me around for years because we were friends, best friends. And then the moment a few popular guys treated me well, I acted like he was dead weight I could drop when it was convenient. He said I hid who I was because I was scared. And then he did the worst thing he could have done in that moment. He told them my secrets. He told them about the things I loved. Magic cards, anime, the characters I made in my head, the hobbies I did alone because I didn't want anyone to know. He exposed me. And that shame, the thing I thought I'd escaped, came rushing back so fast it felt like drowning. I hated him in that moment. Not because he was wrong, because he was right, and because I couldn't handle being seen. So I punched him. I punched my best friend in the face. His nose crunched under my fist. Blood burst across his skin. He hit the ground hard. The second it happened, something in me broke open with horror. I dropped to my knees, tried to help him up, started apologizing, started saying we were leaving. I told Roman, Cameron, and Darren we were done and tried to pull Tommy away. That's what I wish had happened. That's how it plays in my dreams when I'm trying to make it end differently. But the truth is, after my punch, Roman, Darren, and Cameron attacked him. They moved in like animals, kicking, stomping, twisting him on the ground. Tommy fought back where he could, but it was 3 against 1. He screamed. The sound of it mixed with the wind and the trees and the distant night until it felt unreal, like I was watching something happen to someone else. And I did what I had always done. I froze. I watched. I did nothing. People talk about fear like it makes you run. Sometimes it makes you still. It locks you in your own body while the world happens without you. I stood there while my best friend got beaten nearly to death, and I let it happen because I was too scared to stop it. Then it was over. Roman stepped back first, breathing hard, and said, "Okay, easy." And that's when I saw the gun. Tommy was holding a Ruger, shiny and real in the moonlight, aimed wildly as he dragged himself upright. His face was ruined. One eye swollen shut, blood pouring. His nose shattered, teeth broken, his lips sagging. One foot twisted at an angle that didn't make sense. He kept the gun on them. Then his good eye found me as he limped forward. I remember saying his name like a prayer. Tommy, please. The barrel swung toward me. And the strangest part is, I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of the gun. I was afraid of what I'd already done. I cried and told him I was sorry. I told him he was right. I begged him to let me help him. I said we'd go to the cops. I said we'd get him down the mountain. For a moment, something flickered in him, some tiny bit of trust that shouldn't have survived what I'd done. His gun lowered just a fraction. Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. And then the fire extinguisher cracked into the back of his skull. A sickening sound, like something hard breaking something harder. Tommy dropped like a bag of sand. I hit my knees, staring at him, trying to understand what my eyes were showing me. Shiloh stood there with the extinguisher in his hands, his face horrified, like he'd acted without thinking and didn't know what he'd done until it was too late. Oh, fuck, Shiloh stammered. What the hell is going on? Darren and Cameron grabbed the gun, wrapping it in Cameron's shirt so they wouldn't leave prints. Roman checked Tommy, then pulled back, looking at his hands like he didn't want to see what was on them. Darren demanded to know where the girls were. Shiloh said they were 15 minutes down the trail. Roman, Cameron, and Darren shared a look that made my stomach drop. Not panic, not grief. Strategy, he felt, Darren said. Like Tristan, right? Their eyes moved to Shiloh, then to me. I said nothing. They dragged Tommy's body toward the edge. His weight scraped across rock and dirt. I wanted to move, wanted to stop them, wanted to scream. My body wouldn't respond. I stood there like a coward while they hauled him to the lip. Then came the sound I still hear in the worst part of my sleep. The soft squeak of the ground at the edge giving way. And then the long drop. And then the distant final thud. After that, they screamed. Fake screams, rehearsed screams. The kind meant for an audience. Roman grabbed my arm and told me we had to go, and I went. We ran down the mountain into the safe lie of being kids. We lied to the police. They said Tommy fell. We had no service. We were drinking. We panicked. We couldn't find him. They questioned me the most. I shut down every time, because every attempt to speak felt like a trapdoor opening under my feet. With no body, no extinguisher, no evidence, the story held. The town searched for 3 months. I searched for 6. They never found him. And life kept moving, which is what life does when it doesn't belong to the dead. Roman went on to live a normal life. Cameron did too. Shiloh floated through adulthood like that night was a half-remembered bad party. Darren, last I checked, made money in finance, day trading or something like that. From the outside, he looked successful. The kind of guy people call driven. None of them carried it the way I did. When I finally started reaching out years later, testing the waters, asking questions, bringing up the past, their reactions were like knives, not because they were dramatic, because they weren't. No guilt, no confession, no shame. Shiloh couldn't even remember Tommy's name. That's when I started thinking about what Tommy said that night, before everything went to hell, that maybe whatever you call gets shaped by the person calling it, that maybe the thing you bring into the world gets tainted by the hands that summon it. I started to understand that I'd done that to Tommy long before Algernon's lip. He came to me first, a lonely kid who just wanted someone to talk to about cartoons and games. And I took that friendship, something clean, and I used it like a life raft until I found something better. Then I resented him for still needing me. Then I dragged him into people who hated him. Because I wanted my new life to feel real, I threw the first punch. And when they beat him, I let them. That's the center of it. That's the thing I can't dilute with excuses. I can't make it right. There's no version of this where I get to be forgiven and move on like it never happened. I can't go back to that clearing and undo the moment my fist hit his face, or the moment my feet refused to move when he needed me. All I can do now is stop protecting the people who did it. All I can do is speak his name out loud, the way everyone else refuses to. I'm sorry, Tommy. It's not enough. But I'm sorry. And if ghosts really are made of memory, if haunting is just another name for refusing to be erased, then here's what I have left to offer. Be my ghost. Not to punish me. I already live inside that punishment. Be my ghost so they can't keep living like you never existed. Be my ghost so the truth doesn't die with the people who are tired of hearing it. Be my ghost so someone finally remembers what happened at our little Plymouth Rock of hell. Be my ghost, Tommy, so they can remember. Story 3. It feels like some kind of cosmic joke that this might be the only place where my story doesn't get laughed out of the room. I'm not posting because I want to win an argument. I'm not posting to convince anyone. Most people will read this, shrug, and move on, and I honestly hope that's how it goes. I hope this sounds like fiction to you. I hope you never have a reason to recognize any of what I'm describing. But if you're one of the unlucky few who does recognize it, if you've been living with the same wrongness and you've run out of normal explanations, then now would be a good time to pray. Not because prayer fixes everything, but because when you're out of options, you reach for whatever you still have. There's so much I can't explain, so much I don't understand. I'm going to try anyway. Because what else do you do when something impossible starts taking pieces of your life? You talk. You write. You leave a record somewhere, even if it only helps you stay sane for another day. I've never written anything like this before. I don't even know what kind of voice I'm supposed to use. I'm just going to follow my gut and get it all out in one shot. Consider it therapy if you want. Believe me or don't. At this point, the only thing that matters to me is getting it down in words while I still can. I can't remember the last time I missed dinner at my mother's. It's always been our thing, the one constant in a family that's slowly disappeared around the edges. Even though she lives several towns over, I make the drive every week. I've done it for years. I show up, she cooks enough food for 10 people, we talk for hours, and then I drive back to my apartment, feeling like I've checked in with the part of my life that still makes sense. If I'm being honest, going there is mostly her idea. She's always been stubborn in a way that's almost impressive. It's like she's afraid to leave our hometown, or maybe afraid to leave that house. I've asked her 100 times to come stay with me. My apartment isn't huge, but it's clean, and it's in a safer area, and I'm close to hospitals and stores and everything she could need. Every time, she says no. No hesitation. No let me think about it. Just no. She's an old woman set in her ways. She likes her space. She likes her routines. And on a normal day, there's nothing wrong with that. My mother is aging, and it shows in small ways. She doesn't complain, but I see it. The way she moves from room to room, slower than she used to. The way she holds the railing when she goes up the stairs. The way she pauses like she's waiting for her body to catch up with her mind. That's why I hired a caregiver to check in on her a few times a week, even though I knew she'd hate the idea at first. She did hate it at first. She called it being babysat. She made little comments. She acted insulted. But the caregiver helped with errands, groceries, little chores that wore my mother out. And over time, it actually seemed to lift her mood. My mom would never say thank you in a direct, emotional way, but I could tell she was grateful. She had more energy. She sounded less tired when she called me. We've always been close, my mother and me. Even when I was a kid, it was like we were a team. She wasn't just my mom, she was my best friend. That didn't change when I grew up. Now she calls throughout the week to tell me about things I miss while I'm away. She gives me tiny updates like they're news bulletins. She asks when I'm coming home, even though I haven't lived there in years. She also constantly asks me when I'm going to move back and find a job closer. No matter how many times I explain that my work is in the city, that the money is better, that the opportunities are here, she acts like distance is something you can solve by wanting it hard enough. She doesn't understand that our sleepy little town doesn't have anything left for me. Not anymore. And she never skipped our Sunday dinners. Not once. If I told her I wasn't that hungry, she'd shush me and smile like I was still 12. If I suggested a simple meal, she'd wave it off like the idea was disrespectful. Cooking was how she loved people. Feeding you was how she made sure you were still here. So when I stopped hearing from her last week, I didn't just get concerned. I got scared. At first, it was small. A call that went to voicemail. A text that stayed unread. Then another. And another. A full day passed, then two, and it became impossible to pretend it was nothing. My mind did what everyone's mind does. It ran straight to the worst possibilities. Maybe she fell and couldn't get up. Maybe she hit her head. Maybe she had a stroke and couldn't reach the phone. Maybe someone broke in. Maybe something happened with the caregiver. Maybe my mother was lying in that old house alone, waiting for someone to notice. I couldn't sit with that. Luckily, the local sheriff is an old high school friend of mine. It's one of the only benefits of being from a small town. People still pick up when you call. I asked him to swing by and do a wellness check. That night, he called me back. He said my mother looked tired, but otherwise fine. He said she seemed off, but not in a way he could describe, and that she promised she'd call me. I waited. Hours passed. No call. That's when my worry shifted into anger. I hate admitting that, but it's the truth. Relief should have been the main feeling. Instead, I was furious. If she was fine, why wasn't she answering? Why would she let me spiral like that? Did I do something to upset her? Was she punishing me? Was she confused? What was happening? Something didn't feel right, and I couldn't ignore that feeling anymore. So yesterday, after work, I packed a bag and drove over there. In my mind, there were only two outcomes. Either I'd catch her in the act of whatever stubborn nonsense she was pulling, and we'd have it out face to face. Or I'd realize it was all a misunderstanding, and I'd apologize for overreacting. I was hoping for the second one. The whole drive felt wrong. Normally, I love an autumn drive through back roads. The colors, the quiet, the feeling that the world is slowing down. But yesterday, the allure of autumn faded fast. The trees were mostly bare, and the branches looked like skeletal hands reaching out of the ground. The sky felt too low. The shadows felt too long. A small, nagging voice in the back of my head kept offering me terrible ideas, like it was trying to prepare me. My heart started pounding in a pattern that made me feel sick, like my body knew something my mind didn't want to accept. Then, the old farmhouse came into view. Gravel crunched under my tires as I turned into the driveway. The mailbox was worn, but it still had our family name carved into it, the way my father did it with his own hands. Seeing that always hits me in a weird place. My father was a tough man, strong and smart, the kind of guy people looked up to. But he wasn't cold. He was kind in quiet ways, the kind of father who didn't say much, but made sure you always felt safe. He died suddenly when I was young. I'm not going to write out the whole story here, but it ripped something out of us. The absence was like a constant pressure in the house, suffocating. We didn't know how to be a family without him. And then, slowly, our family scattered. My aunt and uncle moved away. My cousins drifted out of my life. My sister married and moved halfway across the world. Even my dog died not long after, like the last piece of normal childhood decided it was done. It was a lot. It was too much at the time, honestly. In the end, it was just me and my mother. Mother and son in that old house, grieving together. Being together helped. It made the loss bearable. She was a good mother. She still is. Or at least, she was. I've asked her so many times to live with me. It would be easier. I wouldn't have to drive for hours every week. She'd be closer to everything. But she always refused. That house was her home. And I understood that on some level. It was the place where she'd built her life. It was also the place where she'd lost the most. Still, when I pulled in yesterday and saw the house sitting there in complete darkness, my stomach dropped. My mother always left the porch light on. Always. Even if she was going to bed early. Even if she wasn't expecting anyone. That little light was like a rule in her world. The farmhouse looked like a silhouette cut out against the night sky. Dead, quiet, wrong, I got out and practically ran up the porch steps. The wood creaked and groaned under my weight. I knocked. I waited. Nothing. No movement. No voice. No light turning on inside. I knocked again, harder, and my anger flared because I needed it to. Fear is paralyzing. Anger gives you momentum. That's when I noticed the windows. They were covered from the inside with newspaper. Not one window. All of them. At least the ones I could see from the porch. Newspaper pressed against the glass like someone was trying to block the world out, or block something else from looking in. My hands started shaking. I dug my keys out of my pocket with fingers that didn't feel like they belonged to me. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself maybe a storm broke something. Maybe she was trying to keep heat in. Maybe she'd gotten paranoid. The lock turned. The heavy door opened with a long squeal that sounded painfully loud in the silence. I reached inside and flicked the light switch. Nothing. No glow. No hum. Just darkness. I stood there for a second, my eyes adjusting, and my mind started painting the worst scenes it could imagine. Then a loud thump echoed from somewhere below, from the direction of the basement. It wasn't a small noise. It wasn't a pipe settling. It was a solid, heavy thump, like something struck wood or concrete with intent. The hair on my arms stood up. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight. The hallway looked trashed. Not messy, not cluttered. It looked like something had torn through the house. Things knocked over. Furniture shifted. A trail of disorder that made no sense for an elderly woman living alone. I moved forward slowly, my phone light shaking in my hand. I couldn't tell if my hands were shaking from anxiety or fear, or some mix of both. I passed the dining room. Broken plates and glasses glittered on the floor like ice. Paintings hung crooked. Some twisted on their nails like someone had bumped into them hard or clawed at them. The whole house felt like it had been disturbed, like it wasn't resting properly. I made my way through the double doors into the kitchen. And there she was. My mother sat at the breakfast table with an old oil lamp in front of her, its flame throwing a warm, orange glow over the mess. Dirt and filth were everywhere, like she hadn't cleaned in days, maybe longer. She was hunched over an unopened can of soup, staring down at it like it was a puzzle. At first, I felt relief so sharp it made my eyes sting. She was alive. She was sitting up. She wasn't lying on the floor hurt. Then the details sank in. She looked older, not a little tired. She looked like time had sped up for her. Her hair was wild. Her skin looked more lined than I remembered, as if fear had carved extra years into her face. Her eyes were dim, unfocused, fixed on that can like she couldn't remember what it was for. The situation was strange in every possible way. And what scared me most was that she didn't even seem to realize I was there. I said her name. No response. I said it louder. Nothing. I shouted. Still nothing. She just stared downward, eyes wide, like she was listening to something inside her head. I walked up and put my hand on her shoulder. She snapped out of it violently, flailing and nearly falling out of the chair. Her fingers clamped around my wrist, hard enough to hurt. When she finally recognized me, her expression shifted into something I haven't seen on her face since I was a child. She looked like a scared kid caught doing something wrong. Guilty, I asked her what happened. I tried to keep my voice steady. I tried to focus on the fact that she was physically okay. She gave me a tiny smile, like she was trying to act normal, and apologized for not calling. She said she'd felt unwell and forgot. It was a lie, a clean, simple lie, and it wasn't like her. My mind screamed liar, and anger rose again, hot and immediate, but I swallowed it. She was still my mother. Whatever was happening, I wasn't going to start by yelling at her. I offered to make her something to eat because she looked like she hadn't eaten properly in days. She shook her head slowly and said she was fine. But she kept glancing toward the doorway, toward the hallway, and there was something in her posture that felt like she was trying to get me to leave. I turned to try the light switch again. She screamed, "No!" She screeched, "Just, please, stop!" I stared at her, stunned, and for the first time a thought crossed my mind that I didn't want. Maybe she's lost her mind. Maybe she's having some kind of breakdown. Brief images flashed through my head of her in a hospital bed, doctors speaking softly, my life suddenly rearranged around caretaking. I flipped the switch on and off a few times, more out of frustration than logic. Still nothing. She turned away in defeat, like the light switch was an argument she couldn't win. "What's going on, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Why is the power out? Why are the windows covered? Why aren't you replying to me? After all this, you better have a damn good explanation." Thump, thump. There it was again. A dull, heavy sound from below us, followed by a faint clicking that came and went. I felt it through my feet, a vibration in the floorboards. My mother's eyes widened. She recoiled so fast her chair scraped the floor. She pulled her feet up onto the seat and wrapped her arms around herself like a child, staring at the basement door. For a second, I couldn't speak. I could only watch her. She glanced at me with tearful brown eyes, shame and fear mixed together, then looked away again. I turned toward the basement door. My footsteps sounded too loud in the kitchen as I walked across. There was a sliding bolt on the basement door, new and crudely installed. Not the kind of lock that came with the house. The kind you add in panic. I looked back at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Thump, click-clack. The clicking sound reminded me of a playing card and bicycle spokes. That childish sound. That wrong sound in a basement. "Mom?" I said softly, and I didn't even know what I was asking. "What did you do? What are you hiding? What have you been living with down here?" She looked at me and shook her head, tears spilling. When I put my hand on the bolt, her voice cracked through the room. "Don't," she shouted. The silence afterward felt thick, broken only by those periodic thumps and clicks from below. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't." Something in me snapped. I couldn't take the lies, the fear, the covered windows. the darkness. I was tired of being treated like a child. Anger swallowed my caution. I grabbed the lantern from the table, yanked the bolt back, and threw the basement door open. It slammed against the wall. The crack echoed. Darkness waited below, and it wasn't normal darkness. It felt heavy, like a presence. A smell drifted up immediately, making my stomach twist, decay mixed with a sweet, sickening scent that clung to the back of my throat. The lantern's light pushed weakly down the stairs. The steps creaked under my feet as I started descending. Behind me, my mother grabbed at my arm and begged me not to go, crying and pulling. But I didn't listen. I couldn't. Not anymore. The thumps and clicks grew louder as I went down, until my shoes hit the basement floor, cold concrete. And then, everything stopped. Silence that should have been a relief. It wasn't. The basement door closed behind me. Then I heard the bolt slide into place. My breath caught. I spun toward the stairs, lantern held up, and for a moment I just stood there, trying to stay calm. I tried to build a normal explanation again. An animal, I told myself. A raccoon. A possum. Something got trapped, and my mother panicked. Maybe it scratched. Maybe it thumped. People get hysterical. I even laughed a little in the dark at myself for letting my mind drift toward ghost stories. I didn't believe in that stuff. I wanted the whole thing over so I could go upstairs, calm my mother down, and get her out of this house. The basement was cluttered with old machinery, boxes piled under dusty sheets, a workbench, tools that belonged to my father. Seeing his things down there made the air feel even heavier, like the past was stored in those corners along with the junk. I grabbed a hammer from the wall. The weight of it in my hand made me feel steadier. I gripped it hard enough that my knuckles went white. There were footprints here and there on the concrete, but they were too big to be from an animal. And they didn't make sense. They didn't lead clearly anywhere, like something had paced around and then vanished. I searched for about 20 minutes. I checked behind sheets. I peered into corners. I looked under the workbench. Nothing. No animal. No person. Nothing but that smell. Defeated and unsettled, I turned back toward the stairs. Thump, thump, click, clack. This time it was louder, closer, and it wasn't coming from the main basement space. It was coming from a small storage area tucked further back. I followed the sound. As I walked, I noticed tiny droplets on the floor, dark, so small I almost missed them. I leaned closer, and that nausea hit me again. The stench was stronger here, and the sweetness underneath it made it worse, like rot disguised with perfume. My stomach rolled. Acid rose in my throat. I forced myself not to throw up. I steadied myself on a box and saw drag marks on the floor, faint but real, leading toward the storage space. Inside were more boxes, old trophies, school stuff, pieces of my childhood packed away. For a second, my mind tried to grab onto that normal memory, like it could save me from what I was feeling now. But then I saw the box in the far corner. A dark stain had soaked through the cardboard. The drag marks pointed straight to it. I didn't know what I expected. I just knew I had to look. Like something inside me needed to see the truth, even if it broke me. I knelt and pulled the box closer. My hammer lay on the floor beside me. Inside were random things, knickknacks, crocheted tablecloths, porcelain figurines. But everything was stained with that dark, oily substance, and the smell hit me so hard it burned my sinuses. I held my breath and started moving items aside, layer by layer. The clicking grew louder. Thump, thump, click, clack. My heart slammed in my chest. Sweat blurred my vision. Under the items was something that looked like a leather-bound book, dark and glossy. I reached for it, and my fingers came away smeared with that oily substance. It felt warm. Warm, my brain stumbled on that detail. Rotting things are cold. Basements are cold. Warm meant alive, or recently alive, or something that didn't follow the rules. As I pulled more of it free, I realized it wasn't a book at all. It was a face, a distorted human face, dried and pulled tight like old leather. The mouth was twisted open in a silent scream. The expression wasn't just pain, it was agony frozen into shape. It looked ancient and yet somehow fresh, coated in that glossy film. For a second, I stopped thinking. I just stared, hypnotized by the horror of it. The smell faded in my awareness because my mind couldn't hold everything at once. My first thought was that it had to be fake, a sick joke, a prop, something someone made. But it was full-sized, and the proportions were wrong in a way that made it even worse than realistic, like a human face remembered incorrectly by something that didn't fully understand humans. Thump, a vibration jolted through my body. The clicking buzzed through my fingers where they touched the thing. And then something grabbed me. It clamped onto my arm with a grip so hard it felt like bone on bone. My breath turned into a sharp, useless gasp. I didn't even scream at first. Terror stole the sound from me. It started pulling me toward the box, toward that thing like my body was being reeled in. I thrashed, suddenly feral, trying to yank my arm free. For a split second, my mind flashed a ridiculous, desperate thought. I'll cut my arm off if I have to. That's how pure the panic was. Then its eyes opened, inches from my face. I don't have words for what it felt like to see that. It was like looking into something that shouldn't be awake, something that wasn't meant to meet your gaze. I wrenched back with everything I had and tore free, falling hard onto the concrete. I tried to breathe, but my lungs wouldn't cooperate. It was like my body forgot how. The lantern had tipped over, flame sputtering, casting a weak, uneven light. The box began to move, not a small shift. It shook, and something started to rise out of it. It wasn't like a person standing up. It was like something unfolding. Like a body that had been compressed and twisted had to crack itself into the right shape. The clicking sound came from it, from inside it, like joints snapping into place in the wrong direction. Click, clack. Click, clack. I remember thinking, over and over, this can't be real. It's too absurd to be real. It was so impossible that I started laughing, not because it was funny, but because my brain didn't have another outlet. I laughed until I felt dizzy, until colored spots danced in my vision. The lantern's weak light caught the figure as it straightened. It stood swaying, mostly hidden in shadow, but its eyes reflected, two small points watching me. Waiting, it took a disjointed step out of the box, dragging its feet, hands stretching forward like it was learning how to use them. Its eyes were pale, rolling too quickly, not focusing right. Thin strands of long black hair hung from its mottled scalp. My whole body shivered so hard, my teeth rattled. The thumping and clicking vibrated through the floor and into my bones, like the sound was trying to get inside me. There was a moment where I thought, this is it. It's going to grab me, and it'll be over. And the terrifying part is that I felt myself accepting it, like surrender was easier than fighting. Then, my mother screamed. She came rushing down the stairs like fear had finally turned into fury. She was holding a broom like a weapon, tears on her face, shrieking as she swung it at the creature. I had never seen that kind of wild strength in her. She looked like a person defending her child, not like an elderly woman who moved slowly and quietly. She set the lamp upright beside me, and the light brightened enough for me to see details I hadn't noticed. Pieces of fabric hung off the creature, remnants of clothing, and the fabric looked disturbingly like a maid's uniform. Before I could process that, the creature grabbed the broom handle and yanked my mother toward it. It moved fast in that moment. Suddenly, sure of itself, its mouth opened, and it bit into her face, tearing away a chunk of wrinkled flesh. The sound my mother made will never leave me. The creature screamed, too, a horrible sound, like anger and hunger mixed together. Something in me finally unlocked. Adrenaline surged, hot and violent. I kicked the creature hard in the body, sending it stumbling back and releasing my mother. She fell to the concrete, one hand pressed to her bleeding face. I grabbed the hammer and swung with everything I had. The impact was solid enough to make my arms ache. The creature slammed into the wall, but it got back up. I hit it again. It got back up. It didn't move like a normal living thing. It didn't even react like one. It just kept trying again and again, like it didn't understand the idea of stopping. My mother, shaking on the floor, lifted a box of matches with her free hand. Her eyes found mine, and in that look I understood what she was asking. I struck match after match, my hands clumsy with panic. When I finally got a strong flame, I tossed it onto the creature's tattered clothing. It caught instantly, like the fabric had been soaked in alcohol. The creature erupted in flames and shrieked, reaching toward us as the fire flared up and licked the ceiling. For a second, its eyes seemed to burn from the inside, light pouring out where there should have been darkness. Then the flames died down quickly, too quickly, leaving behind a smoldering pile of ash and a smell so awful I had to cover my mouth. And suddenly, it was quiet again. My mother sat there with blood on her hand, tears streaming down her face. I stared at the ashes like my mind couldn't accept that something so horrible could turn into something so simple. She looked at me and pleaded. I didn't know what to do. That's when the truth spilled out of her, messy and choking. She told me she caught the caregiver stealing. Small things at first. Money, jewelry, things my mother didn't use often. When she confronted her, the woman didn't deny it or apologize. She lost it. She screamed. She attacked. My mother pointed toward the stairs and the concrete near them, where a stain marked the floor like a shadow that had soaked in. She said the woman fell, twisted and wrong, begging for help in a language my mother didn't understand. My mother said she panicked. She shut the basement door. She turned off the lights. She left her there. She said she was afraid they'd blame her. Afraid nobody would believe an old woman defending herself. Afraid her whole life would become a courtroom and a jail cell. Then she started crying harder, repeating the word blamed like it was stuck in her throat. And then her face changed. Something frantic took over her eyes. She grabbed my arm, nails digging in. She told me she turned on music to drown out the noise, and at first it helped. But during the night, she started hearing the caregiver moving around the house anyway, wailing, walking, but never leaving. She said it would come up the stairs at night and stand outside her bedroom door, scratching for hours. She said when she put the lock on the basement door, it got angry. It turned off the power. She went down to flip the breaker and found it hiding in that box. She said it peeked out at her, and she saw what it had become. She was dead, my mother whispered. She was dead, for heaven's sake. She stopped shaking, but the tears kept coming. Then she looked at me like a drowning person looks at someone on the shore. Son, she said, why is this happening? I didn't have an answer. Nothing in my life had prepared me for the idea of a dead thing changing into something else, something that could move and stalk and scratch at doors. It felt like we'd fallen into a set of rules that didn't belong in the real world. But the ashes were real. The bite on my mother's face was real. The smell was real. My shaking hands were real. We sat there for a while, in silence. When I tried to stand, she stood too, holding on to me like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. I kept glancing back into the basement, like I expected the ash to reassemble itself. We climbed the stairs with the lantern, the steps groaning beneath us. Every creak sounded like a warning. When we reached the kitchen, I shut the basement door and slid the bolt back into place. I kissed her forehead. I told her we'd deal with everything tomorrow. That we'd clean up. That we'd call someone. That we'd figure it out. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just grateful she was alive. But I didn't sleep. I lay awake all night in my old room, exhausted, drifting toward sleep, and then snapping awake again. Because every time I started to fall asleep, I heard scratching at my bedroom door. Soft at first, then louder, then steady, like fingernails dragging in slow lines. Each time I checked, there was no one there. The hallway was empty. The house was silent. My mother was asleep like nothing was wrong, her face relaxed in a way that made my skin crawl. This morning I found her in the basement, humming songs from my childhood, like it was a normal place to sit, like the smell hadn't been there, like the ashes hadn't been real, like she hadn't been bitten in the face by something that wore a stolen uniform. She hasn't moved much since. She smiles at me the way I remember. Her voice sounds like her. Her wound is already healing in a way that doesn't make sense, which should comfort me, but doesn't. It makes me feel like the world is still tilted. She doesn't have much appetite. She doesn't seem thirsty either. But I keep telling myself that's okay. People lose appetite after trauma. People go into shock. We'll get through it. Together, it's just a setback. She's still my mother. She has to be. I've never missed a family dinner. Not once. And I don't intend to start now. The only problem is this. I have no idea what she likes to eat. Story 4. 463342. I am cold and hungry because the ground is cold, the fire is not lit, and I have not eaten yet. I turn to Elias. How are you feeling? Okay. How come? He frowns like the question is stupid. Because I am no. Why do you feel okay? He thinks about it slow. Because we're sitting down now. The tarp's up. The rain isn't hitting me anymore. That's better. I relax my forehead and put the dice back into my backpack. I pull the zipper closed, loop the straps around the metal peg, and snap the padlock shut. It clicks. I shake it hard, twice, and watch it hold. Locked. I locked it. The key is in my back pocket. I can feel it through the fabric. We walk into the trees to find wood. The canopy above us is thick enough to turn daylight into a dim green glow. We gather fallen branches and dead twigs and bring them back to the tarp. When the fire finally catches, we heat tins of beans over the embers. We cup the tins in our hands and eat fast, like warmth is something that might get taken away if we don't swallow it quickly. In the morning, I shake dew off a low branch and twist until the joint gives. Sap stretches like string, then snaps. The tree seems to shudder as I steal it. I count out 4 twigs. Snap, 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 snap. I drop the pieces where I'm standing and listen. The woods are never truly quiet. There's always a small rustle in the leaves, a distant bird, the soft movement of something hidden. But I'm listening for something else, for an extra sound that doesn't belong. Behind me, Elias pulls down the tarp while I spread the map on my knees. Hammerton, Ripon, Boroughbridge. I take the black marker and hold the dice in my other hand. I roll. Snake eyes. Again, snake eyes. Then a 4 and a 6, with wide strokes. I cross out the area beneath the old junction and fold the map back into my bag. We head north, like we did yesterday. My breath hangs in the air like smoke. Elias walks a few feet behind me, looking down, limping around roots like his ankle is made of glass. There's nothing to say. Words feel like they take energy we can't spare. The woods thin out into open fields. We climb a fence, and I yank my backpack loose from brambles. The ground here is messy, full of old tractor ruts holding stagnant pools of muddy water. Some of it has an oily rainbow film on top. We weave around them, quick and careful, like the puddles might reach up and grab our boots. To the east, there's a small hamlet. Lights glow behind windows. Smoke curls from chimneys. For a second, the idea of warmth hits me so hard I almost step toward it without thinking. I picture walking up to a door, hat in hand, begging someone to let us in, to feed us, to tell us we're safe. The thought turns into dread so fast it makes my stomach knot. The picture in my head changes. I imagine their faces when they see us. Their confusion, their fear, their questions. And then something worse. I imagine myself trying to answer those questions honestly. We keep going. A few miles down the country road, I feel Elias slow until he's almost stopped. I turn and see him staring into the field on our left, head tilted like he's listening to a sound I can't hear. I follow his gaze. At first, I see only hills and mist. Then I see it. Far out, surrounded by haze, something rises from the ground and disappears into cloud. Thick strands tangled together, splitting and rejoining like roots or twisted pipes or branches grown wrong. It looks like a structure, and not a structure at the same time. Too large to be anything normal. Too smooth in places, too rough in others. It isn't a tower the way a tower should be. It's more like something pushing upward, forcing itself out of the earth. I don't know what it is, but my body reacts like it does. Heat flares in my gut. A sudden, hungry interest. Like the thing has noticed me and likes what it sees. I swallow hard and force that feeling down, like putting out a spark before it turns into flame. I blink twice. Hey, Elias, I call. He's fully turned toward it now, leaning forward on the balls of his feet. His mouth hangs slightly open. His fists are clenched like he's holding himself back from running toward it. Mate, come on, I clap sharply. The sound snaps him out of it. He flinches and looks at me, eyes darting, like he's waking from a dream. Oh yeah, my ankle's killing me. I just needed a second. I grunt something impatient, and we keep moving. Still, I keep glancing behind us, even though I don't want to. The road we've already walked lies calm and ordinary, like the world is fine and we're the ones who are wrong. Elias hums under his breath. The uneven clack of his boots makes my jaw tighten. He sounds like someone on a casual hike, not someone running from something that can't be explained. We find a dirt track leading back into woods and follow it until the trees swallow us again. We set camp as daylight fades. Elias nails down the tarp. I pull the key from my pocket and shake the lock again before opening my pack. I roll the dice. A 2 and a 4. A 3 and a 2. 2 sixes. I speak it out loud because speaking it makes it real, and real things can be controlled. I am tired and worn because we have walked a long way. I am exhausted because we haven't stopped, and I want to sleep. Satisfied, I put the dice away. I sit against my bag and watch Elias work. He keeps pausing between tasks, long, thoughtful gaps, like he's trying not to think about something by thinking about everything else. Later, when the fire is low and the dark is thick, Elias shifts restlessly in his sleeping bag. I just see it, he says, in my mind. I get lost in it. I can't stop thinking about it. The tower. The thing we saw today? Yes, it's just there. And it's like I'm trying to remember it, but it keeps fading. Then don't remember it, he lets out a small, helpless laugh. I can't help it. I sit up and lean on my palms, staring at him hard. How do you feel? He hesitates. Funny. Something twists tight inside me. I narrow my eyes. Funny how? Because of that tower, he says. Because it's not normal, I chew on his words. Slow. How funny. What does it feel like? He speaks faster now, like the words are spilling out on their own, like I need to see it again. Like I need to go back and prove it's real. I want to get closer and see what it is, how tall it is, if I could climb it, and I hit him. My hand smacks across his face. His head jerks sideways, but he doesn't recoil. He just looks back at me, startled, like someone slapped him awake. He rubs his cheek, cracks his jaw, and says nothing. How do you feel now? I ask. Like some bastard punched me in the face. Good, I say, and a small smirk slips out before I can stop it. I sink back into my sleeping bag, but the anger keeps burning, so I push again. Listen. Cold, tired, hungry, sick. That's what you are. You're not funny. You're not happy. If you're happy out here, then you're dead. Elias stares at me like he's trying to understand if I'm warning him or insulting him. Maybe both. I pull the covers up and stare at the canopy above, waiting for sleep to take me before my thoughts get loud again. Morning comes gray and damp. I twist another branch off a trunk. I hear the fibers snap as it comes free. I stumble back, branch in hand, and start counting twigs. 6, snap, 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 snap. The last one doesn't break cleanly, so I work it back and forth until it separates with a wet, struggling sound. I let them fall. They hit the ground with a bang so loud my whole body jolts. It doesn't sound like wood. It sounds like a gunshot. Like thunder cracking right beside my head. Pain explodes in my ears. Everything inside them feels swollen. I drop to all fours and clamp my hands over them, screaming without meaning to. The sound vibrates through my bones. My vision swims. I crawl back toward the tarp, shaking. My hands fumble at my rucksack. I curse, trying to get the lock open. I pull out the dice and roll them with trembling fingers. 1 and a 3. I lie there, panting, as Elias runs back to me. Who was that? He shouts. Is someone here? I cough. No, we're alone. What the hell was that? Was it a gun? It's nothing, I say, too fast. It's not anything. I'm serious. He stares at me like I'm insane. How can that be nothing? What happened? I think we need to keep moving. He looks exasperated, but doesn't argue long. We pack up quickly. My hands shake so badly I can barely tie the guy lines. Elias lifts the rucksack and reaches toward my bag, toward the dice. Don't you fucking touch that, he flinches, half realizing too late what he's doing. But his hand closes around them anyway. Reflex, curiosity. I smack his hand without thinking. The dice scatter onto the wet leaves. I drop down, scrabbling for them like they're medicine. He watches me, silent, while I roll again and again. What are you doing? He finally asks. I stop long enough to breathe. The numbers don't form a pattern. They don't warn me. They don't reassure me. Just random. It's important, I say, voice thin. I need them to tell me how far we are. It's random. It should be random. I trail off because I can see myself through his eyes. A grown man on his knees in the mud, obsessed with dice and a marker like it's the only thing keeping the world in place. Shame hits me, hot and useless. Elias doesn't comment. He just shoulders the supplies and starts walking, giving me a glance that says, "Come on." I follow. We climb out of the trees and back onto the road. The sky looks wrong, pale and washed out, cloudless but not blue, like the color has been drained. In the distance, I see more of the things now, more towers, more root-like shapes pushing upward. They weren't there yesterday, or if they were, we didn't see them. Now they stand like ancient pillars, dominating the landscape, as if they're holding up the world. Elias keeps his eyes forward. I try to do the same. But even in my peripheral vision, they loom. They make the air feel tight. We hear him before we see him. A man at the crossroads, stumbling and shaking and shrieking like his throat is burning. His knees buckle as he moves. He holds his stomach, trying to keep something in, but blood leaks through his fingers and drips onto the cobbles. He leaves a dark trail behind him. When he reaches us, I can see what's been done to him. Joints cut open, tendons and ligaments exposed, fingers missing, limbs broken in places that shouldn't break. It looks deliberate, like someone took him apart to see how he worked, then sent him out still alive. Elias drapes a thin blanket over him. We don't help him beyond that. We don't even speak much. We leave him in the mud ditch and keep walking. And I hate myself for the relief I feel when his screaming fades behind us. Every few hours we stop, check the map, check the dice, check our feelings. I avoid looking behind us because the urge to wait just a little longer keeps scratching at my brain. Wait, then roll. See what happens. Then you'll know. That thought feels like a trap door. So we keep moving. By sundown, we find what we're looking for. A faint patch of grass that looks slightly bluer than the rest. Only a few shades off, subtle enough that you could miss it unless you were searching for it. Elias reaches it first. His limp eases. He crouches and strokes the grass with his palm like he's greeting a pet. Under his breath, he starts muttering a rhyme. A wind moves through his hair. The sunlight dims. I recognize the rhythm even though I don't know why. A phrase rises in me, familiar like a childhood song I haven't heard in decades. I join in, quietly at first, then louder. Something hot and hungry wakes up in my chest and climbs my throat. We raise our voices without deciding to. The tune feels ancient. It feels alive. It doesn't belong to us, but it moves through us like we're instruments. Elias collapses onto the blue grass, eyes wide, mouth open in pure joy. He laughs and clenches the blades in his fists like he's holding on to the planet itself. The ground shakes. I suck in air and scream out the strongest part of the song, except I'm not singing anymore. I'm screaming. I've been screaming for longer than I realize. Elias's joy twists into terror as the ground opens beneath him. A pit forms, widening fast. A tunnel, a throat in the earth. I lunge, grab his right leg, and pull. I'm screaming and pulling. Elias is screaming, too clawing at the grass. The hole expands, cavernous and wet. The air inside it thick with the smell of stone and something deeper. It feels like it wants him. It feels like it wants me. I drag Elias free, and he curls into a tight ball, vomiting until there's nothing left. I tug at his shoulder, trying to get him to move. He wipes his mouth, tastes bile and blood, and scrambles away from the edge like it's a living mouth. We run back to the road. When we stop, my mind drifts, and I hate myself for it. Because I can't remember the song. I never learned it. I never knew it. And yet for that moment, I knew it perfectly. And I loved it. And I wanted it to take me. Elias sits by the fire that night, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring into the flames like he's trying to burn an image out of his mind. I approach slowly. How are you feeling? He looks at me with dead eyes. Go fuck yourself. We ration food harder after that. Days blur. We run on scraps. Hunger becomes a constant ache, the kind that makes your thoughts slippery. One morning I wake with weakness clamping my chest. Elias is asleep by the cold fire, face blackened with soot, wrapped in the same blanket like a child. He looks peaceful for the first time in days. I don't wake him. Richard notices wild berries first and suggests we forage deeper in the woods. Richard, I don't question why he's with us. I don't question when he joined. In the moment, it feels normal, like he's always been part of the group. We walk into the trees together. Richard holds my hand. His grip is firm, almost gentle. We pass bushes heavy with berries, but we don't stop. We both know the best ones are deeper. A sharp pain twists my ankle. I stumble. Richard looks at me with pure compassion and pulls me upright, guiding me forward. We can't stop, he says, like he's reminding me of a rule. I look ahead and see a clearing. At the edge of it, shapes stand between the trees. Watching, waiting, as my ankle throbs and my leg begins to give, I try to slow down. But Richard keeps pulling me. He's too strong. My arm starts to hurt from how hard he yanks. I try to let go, but his fingers are locked with mine. I pull back, and he doesn't move. It's like he's rooted. Then he holds something out with his free hand. A cherry, not a berry. A single cherry, hanging heavy by the stem. It's larger than any cherry I've ever seen, glossy and perfect. Sunlight catches droplets on its skin like it's been washed clean for me. I turn at the sound of rustling. They step into the clearing. At first, my brain says they're naked. Then it says they're clothed. Heavy coats, jeans, scarves, dressed for cold moorland wind. Then, my brain breaks again, and I see the truth under the lie. It isn't clothing. It's flesh shaped like clothing. A second skin molded into textures that imitate wool and denim. Folds and seams carved into it like a costume, fused to their bodies. A cruel copy of human comfort. They move closer, gliding without urgency. Their arms hang loosely. Their hands are turned inward. Their faces are blank. They make a soft clicking sound, like insects tapping their bodies together. I twist and realize they've surrounded me. Richard still holds my hand. He smiles at me with love and forgiveness, like I'm the one who has done something wrong and he's here to let me be forgiven. What do you want? I ask him. He only tilts his head, still smiling. What do you want? I ask again, louder, heaven, he says. Simply, the word hits me like cold water. Richard's grip relaxes. He opens his fingers and my hand drops. He places the cherry in my palm, and in that second, I recognize him. He's the man from the road, the one we left in the ditch, the one with the cut-open joints and the blood trail and the broken limbs, the one we didn't save. Now he stands in front of me, restored, clean, beautiful, like pain never touched him. They all wait for me to eat. I let the cherry fall from my hand onto the leaves. Then, with forced calm, I turn and walk out of the clearing, past the watching things, past Richard, toward our camp. My hands tremble so badly I keep them close to my side so no one can see. Behind me, when I glance back once, they are frozen in place. And then they begin to sink into the ground, slowly, as if the earth is swallowing them like they were never there. My awareness snaps open like a curtain lifting. I start to cry. I start to run. I trip through the undergrowth, ankles screaming with pain. I spot our tarp through the trees. Elias is where I left him, curled on his side. I stumble over him in my rush to my backpack. He jolts awake. I scream and swear as my fingers fumble at the lock. I rip the zipper off the bag, pry the teeth open, and spill everything onto the wet leaves. The dice scatter. I spread the map flat and grab my marker. Thirsk, Breckenborough A19. I look at the dice. 2 6s. I roll again. 2 6s. I roll again. 2 6s. My stomach drops. Again and again I roll. 2 6s. Two sixes. Two sixes. I start crossing out huge sections of the map with frantic strokes. Two sixes. Fuck, two sixes. Fuck, fuck, fuck. My temples throb. I tear the bottom third of the map off with both hands, like destroying it will change what's happening. My mind tries to calculate odds, tries to cling to math like math can save me. 1 in 36. 1 in 1296. 1 in 46,000. 1 in, it spirals too fast and I can't keep up. My chest convulses as I suck in air. I'm hunched over the map and dice when I feel a shadow over me. Arms wrap around my shoulders from behind. Elias hugs me tightly, like he's trying to pull me back from the edge of something. How are you feeling? He asks. I am weak and I'm scared, I stammer. Because I don't know. Because I see, but it's not real. Because no, he says, sharp but not cruel. You dumbass, how are you? The way he says it breaks something in me. I sob and fold down toward the ground. Elias moves to face me, arm around my shoulders, steadying my shaking. We're fucked, I whisper into my knees. Of course we're fucked, he says. We've been fucked since it started. I can't do anything, I say. We're lost. I test and I check and I'm careful and I do what I can, but it takes me anyway. I can't do it and then I'm happy and then I realize and I'm fucked. I look up. He looks back like he's judging my soul. Mate, he says quietly, look at me. I'm happy. I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm starving, but I'm happy. Horror shoots through me. He stays steady. No, he says, I'm not sick. I'm not insane. I'm happy because I'm alive, right now. I roll the dice once more. Nothing changes. We set off again because that's what we do. I still count, still snap twigs, still check the dice, still try to keep our feelings inside the narrow, safe range. But the world is different now. The hills are a patchwork of greens and blues that feel too bright. The sky bleeds red, and above it a canopy of dark tendrils gathers like something alive. I feel it singing to me. The ground feels soft in places, like it could open if it wanted. A thought keeps returning, gentle and tempting. Being consumed would be relief. Being taken would be peace. I slap my own face, hard enough to hurt, and keep walking. Elias staggers on ahead, bent under his rucksack. I offer to stop. He doesn't answer. The idea of south is danger, north is safety starts to fade, like it was just a story we told ourselves to keep moving. Now the horror isn't behind us. It's everywhere. It soaks into the landscape. It stands in the distance like pillars. It hums in the air like a low song just under hearing. At some point, I'm standing in front of a door, my fingers on a brass handle, feeling cold seep into my skin. I knock. Or I don't. The moment slides around in my mind. Footsteps inside. Carpet. A latch. I look down and see ice on concrete, and I can't remember where I am. I hit the door again, impatient, desperate. Elias turns toward me, and suddenly I'm doubled over, vomiting on the ground. He drops his bag and runs back, trying to hold me up. The door opens. And then, things stop making sense in a way that feels deliberate. I'm inside a hallway lined with framed photographs, but none of them repeat. Different families, different faces, all smiling in warm summer light. It feels like a museum of parenthood, like someone collected happy families the way some people collect stamps. I know where I'm going without looking. A living room, a hearth, soft warmth, a piano in the corner like it's waiting to be played, books on tables, mugs of tea steaming, toys scattered on a rug. It's so normal it makes my eyes sting. Then the room shifts. The chandelier isn't a chandelier. Something hangs above, smiling down, a body divided into pieces, suspended in air, connected by red sinew like webbing. Flesh fills the space where furniture should be. faces stretched over upholstery, swallowing cabinets, pulsing as if the house itself is alive. The comfort is a disguise. Or the horror is. I can't tell which. I step forward anyway. Then I'm back on the road. The scene snaps like a rubber band. My ears ring. My blood pounds. Elias is gone. I hear him over hedgerows, out in a field, singing. I try to call him, but my voice won't work. The song rises in me again, forcing its way into my throat. I clamp my hands over my ears and scream. He keeps walking. The ground opens in front of him. Then I'm on the ground and someone is hitting me. A fist across my face, an uppercut into my chest, hands in my hair, dragging me up. Another blow. Elias is in the distance and also right here. He is running and he isn't getting closer. He is singing, and the singing is killing me. A blade flashes. Blood warms my mouth. Someone squeezes my throat until I can't breathe. How are you feeling? The voice demands again and again. Then it stops. Silence. I lock eyes with Elias, with myself, with something behind his eyes. Contempt, hatred, something else. And then laughter erupts out of us both like we've been holding it in for years. We laugh in each other's faces until we can't breathe. We scream with laughter. It doesn't feel like humor. It feels like release. Like the world has finally admitted it's a joke and we're the last ones to get it. We don't sleep for 10 days. And when we do, we wake up laughing. After that, time breaks. Scenes pile on top of each other. A man running toward a cabin. Bolts sliding into place. An attic hatch. A fire extinguisher jammed into a hinge. A gun heavy in my trousers. An office full of files and typewriters. A woman named Lydia glancing up. A finger on a trigger. A click. A shot. Then, my wife calling me from the kitchen. It's 9 o'clock. Children upstairs. Names, Jacob. Jonathan. A little one reading in bed. A book, The Road. A question about happy endings. My daughter's face frozen in fear. My hand holding cold metal. A man climbing into the attic hatch. Colleagues screaming. The cabin shaking under blows. The dice rolls a 4 and becomes impossible, like it is every number at once. Richard puts the cherry in my hand again. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know what belongs to me and what was planted. I don't know if these are memories or warnings or bait. At some point, Elias is gone for good. I'm on the road alone. My backpack feels pointless. My belongings feel like a joke. I leave them behind because I'm too tired to care. The ground feels warm. I feel content to lie down and stay there. But I stand and walk anyway, because walking is what I do. I feel tired. I feel weak. I feel like I might die. And I'm not even sure that's a bad thing. I feel happy now, but not because things are good. Happy because the fight is gone. Happy because I can't hold fear tightly enough anymore to keep it shaped. I feel still, like the world has finally stopped shaking inside my head. And the worst part is that, somewhere under all of it, a thought keeps returning. Soft and patient, like it has all the time in the world. You have been saved.